The corridors of the base were filled with smoke and the sound of alarms. Jake and Dr. Chun ran through the chaos, dodging soldiers who were rushing to their battle stations. Emergency lights flashed red, making everything look like a nightmare. "This way!" Lisa shouted over the noise, leading Jake down a side corridor that would take them toward the interrogation rooms. Jake could hear the battle raging outside. The Zephyrian attack was fierce, and it seemed like they knew exactly where to hit the base's weak points. His suspicions about Major Ross were getting stronger with every explosion. They reached a sealed door marked with security warnings. Lisa used her access card to open it, and they entered a quieter section of the base. Here, the sounds of battle were muffled, but the emergency lights still flashed. "The interrogation rooms are down here," Lisa said, pointing down a long hallway. As they moved forward, Jake heard something that made him stop. It was Lyra's voice, and she sounded like she was in pain. "In here," Jake said, moving toward one of the doors. Through a small window, Jake could see into the interrogation room. Lyra was sitting in a chair with her hands tied behind her back. Major Ross was standing in front of her, and he was not alone. Two men in different uniforms stood with him, uniforms that Jake didn't recognize. "Who were those men?" Lisa whispered, looking through the window with him. Jake studied their uniforms and felt his blood run cold. "They're not human military. Look at those insignia." "Oh no," Lisa said. "Are they ... Corporate security," Jake said. "Private contractors. The kind that don't follow military rules." Inside the room, Ross was talking to the two men. Jake couldn't hear the words through the thick door, but he could see that they were discussing Lyra like she was an object to be traded. Lyra looked up suddenly, and her eyes met Jake's through the window. Even from a distance, he could see the fear and pain in her expression. But there was something else too. Determination. "We have to get her out of there," Jake said. "How?" Lisa asked. "The door is locked, and there are 3 of them." Jake looked around and noticed something. The ventilation system. "These old buildings have maintenance tunnels." "That's crazy," Lisa said. "Even if we could get in there, what then?" "Then we get Lyra and run," Jake said. "Run where?" "The base is under attack." "Away from here," Jake said. "Somewhere safe." Lisa stared at him. "Jake, you're talking about desertion." "That's a death sentence." "Staying here might be a death sentence too," Jake said. "Ross is working with people who don't care about military law. If we don't get Lyra out now, we might never see her again." Before Lisa could argue, the door to the interrogation room opened. One of the corporate security men came out and walked in their direction. Jake and Lisa quickly hid behind a corner. "The alien is being difficult," the man said into his communicator. "Ross says we might need to use stronger methods." "Negative," came a voice from the communicator. "The package needs to be delivered intact. Use drugs if necessary, but no permanent damage." The man walked past their hiding spot without seeing them. Jake felt sick to his stomach. They were talking about Lyra like she was cargo. "I'm going in there," Jake said. "Wait," Lisa said. "I have an idea." She pulled out her data pad and started typing quickly. "I'm going to trigger a security alert in another part of the building. That should draw some of them away." "What kind of alert?" "Fire in the computer core," Lisa said. "That'll get their attention." A moment later, new alarms started sounding, different from the battle alarms. Jake could hear people running in the distance and voices shouting about a fire emergency. "Now," Lisa said. Jake moved to the interrogation room door and tried Lisa's access card. To his surprise, it worked. The door opened quietly, and Jake slipped inside. Ross was alone with Lyra now. The other man had left to deal with the fire alert. Ross was leaning over Lyra, speaking to her in a threatening voice. "You're going to tell me everything you know about the resistance movements in the Zephyrian Empire," Ross said. "And then you're going to help us win this war." "I told you," Lyra said weakly. "I don't know about military things." "Stop lying," Ross said. "We know you were more than just a conscript." We know you were a researcher before the war. Jake stepped into the room behind Ross. Get away from her. Ross spun around, his hand moving to his weapon. Morrison, how did you get in here? It doesn't matter, Jake said. Let her go. You're making a big mistake, Ross said. Walk away now, and I might not have you shot. I'm not walking away, Jake said. Ross pulled out his sidearm and pointed it at Jake. Then you're going to die with your alien friend. That was when Lyra did something unexpected. Despite being tied to the chair, she managed to kick Ross in the back of the leg. He stumbled forward, and Jake grabbed his gun hand. The two men struggled for control of the weapon. Ross was older but more experienced. In combat, Jake was younger and stronger, but he had never been in a real fight like this. Jake, Lyra called out. Behind you. Jake spun around and saw the corporate security man returning. The man had his own weapon drawn and was aiming at Jake. Without thinking, Jake pushed Ross toward the security man. Both men fell to the ground, and their weapons scattered across the floor. The restraints! Lyra called out. Jake quickly untied the ropes that held Lyra to the chair. As soon as she was free, she grabbed one of the fallen weapons and pointed it at Ross and the security man. Stay down, she said, her English clear despite her fear. Ross looked up at her with hate in his eyes. You're making a mistake, alien. We're the only ones who can protect you. You are not protecting me, Lyra said. You are using me. Jake picked up the other weapon and helped Lyra watch their prisoners. We need to get out of here. Where can we go? Lyra asked. I know where. Came a voice from the doorway. It was Dr. Chun, but she wasn't alone. Behind her was Sergeant Maria Santos, the base's communications officer. Maria? Jake said, surprised. I've been listening to the communications, Maria said. Ross isn't working alone. There are others involved, people high up in the command. Structure. How high up? Jake asked. High enough that we can't trust anyone here, Maria said. We need to leave, and we need to leave now. Leave and go where? Jake asked. I know about a small reconnaissance ship in the North Hangar, Maria said. It's fueled and ready for a long-range mission. That's stealing military property, Jake sighed. Everything we've done today is against military law, Lisa pointed out. We're already in trouble. Lyra moved closer to Jake. Where you go, I go. We are bonded. Jake looked at her, then at his friends, then at Ross and the security man. On the floor, he was being asked to make a choice that would change his life forever. If we take that ship, we can never come back, he said. If we stay here, Lyra will disappear, Maria said. And probably us too, for knowing too much. Jake made his decision. Let's go. They left Ross and the security man tied up in the interrogation room and made their way through the base toward the North Hangar. The battle outside was still raging, which provided perfect cover for their escape. The reconnaissance ship was small but fast, designed for long-range scouting missions. Maria had been right. It was fueled and ready to go. Where are we heading? Jake asked as they prepared for takeoff. Neutral space, Maria said. There are places where neither humans nor Zephyrians have control. And then what? Lisa asked. Then, we figure out how to end this war, Lyra said quietly. The right way. As their ship lifted off from the base, Jake looked back at the place that had been his home for the past year. He was leaving everything he had known, but he was doing it for something he believed in. Beside him, Lyra squeezed his hand. Thank you, she said. For what? For choosing me over your duty, she said. You are my duty now, Jake said. We're bonded, remember? Lyra smiled, and for the first time since he had met her, it was a smile without fear or sadness. Their ship disappeared into the stars, carrying 4 people who had chosen conscience over orders and hope over hatred. 2 weeks had passed since Lyra's arrival at the human base, and her English was getting much better. She spent most of her time in the medical bay with Jake, teaching him words in her language while he helped her learn more about human culture. Dr. Lisa Chun watched their lessons with great interest, taking notes about how their bond seemed to help them understand each other. Tell me about your home, Jake said one afternoon as they sat together in the medical bay. What was it like before the war? Lyra's eyes became sad, and she looked out the small window at the alien landscape. Altera was a beautiful planet. Many trees, blue water, clean air. My people lived in peace for many years. Your people? Jake asked. You mean the Zephyrians? No, Lyra said, shaking her head. Alterans. We are not Zephyrians. We are, how you say, prisoners. Jake felt confused. But you're wearing a Zephyrian uniform. They make us wear it, Lyra explained. They take our planet, take our people, make us fight for them. If we refuse, they hurt our families. Dr. Chun, who had been listening from her desk, looked up sharply. Are you saying that the Zephyrian army is made up of conquered people? Many of us, yes, Lyra said. Real Zephyrians are the rulers, the officers. But most soldiers are from planets they conquered, like me. That changes everything, Lisa said, reaching for her communication device. Commander Wells needs to hear. This. Wait, Jake said, putting his hand on Lisa's arm. Maybe we should be careful about who we tell. Why? Lisa asked. Because Major Ross has been asking too many questions about Lyra, Jake said. I don't trust him. Before Lisa could respond, the medical bay door opened and Major Ross walked in, as if he had been listening to their conversation. Behind him were two guards that Jake didn't recognize. Miss Lyra, Ross said with a fake smile, I hope you're feeling better today. Lyra moved closer to Jake, her body tense. I am well. Thank you, she said politely, but Jake could hear the fear in her voice. Good, Ross said, because I have some questions for you about Zephyrian military positions. I already told you. I don't know about military things, Lyra said. Oh, but I think you do, Ross said, pulling out a datapad. You see, we've been monitoring Zephyrian communications, and we've learned some interesting things. Jake didn't. Like the way Ross was looking at Lyra. What kind of things? Well, for example, we know that there's going to be a large Zephyrian force moving through this sector tomorrow, Ross said, and we know that they're carrying some very important supplies. So, Jake said. So, Ross continued, I think our friend here might be able to help us set up an ambush. Lyra's eyes went wide. No, she said. I will not help you kill my people. Your people? Ross asked. I thought you said the Zephyrians were your enemies. The Zephyrian rulers are my enemies. Lyra said, but the soldiers? Many of them are like me. Taken from their homes, forced to fight? Ross smiled coldly. That's very touching, but they're still enemies of humanity. Not all of them, Lyra said. Some of them want to stop fighting. Some of them want to go home. Jake could see that Ross was getting angry. It doesn't matter what they want. They're shooting at us, so we shoot back. There must be another way, Lyra said desperately. If you knew the truth, if you understood ... The truth? Ross laughed. The truth is that your people started this war. The truth is that they've killed thousands of humans. The Zephyrian Empire started the war, Lyra said. My people did not choose this. Ross turned to Jake. Morrison, convince your alien friend to help us. If she gives us the information we need, we can end this war faster. Jake looked at Lyra, who was staring at him with pleading eyes. He could see that she was torn between her loyalty to her own people and her bond with him. I won't force her to do anything, Jake said. You won't force her? Ross asked. Morrison, this is war. We do what we have to do. Not like this, Jake said, standing up. She's not a tool for us to use. Ross's expression became dangerous. She's a prisoner of war, Morrison, and you're a soldier. Start acting like one. I'm acting like one, Jake said. I'm protecting someone who can't protect herself. She's not your responsibility, Ross said. She's the enemy. She's my friend, Jake said firmly. Ross stared at him for a long moment, then turned back to Lyra. Let me ask you something different. If we release you, will Would you go back to fighting us? Lyra was quiet for a moment, thinking. I would go back to my people, yes. But I would not fight unless I had to protect them. That's the same thing, Ross said. No, Lyra said. It is not. There is difference between attacking and defending. Ross pulled out his communicator. Guards, take the prisoner to interrogation room 3. The 2 guards stepped forward, but Jake moved to block them. She's not going anywhere. Morrison. Stand down, Ross ordered. No, Jake said. She's under my protection. Your protection doesn't mean anything here, Ross said. Step aside, or I'll have you arrested too. Lyra stood up slowly, her hand on Jake's arm. It's okay, Jake. I will go. No, Jake said. I won't let them hurt you. They cannot hurt me, Lyra said softly. Not really. But they can hurt you if you try to protect me. I don't care, Jake said. I care, Lyra said. You are bonded to me. Your safety is my responsibility. Ross was getting impatient. This is touching, but we have work to do. Guards, take her. The guards moved forward again, but this time Lyra went with them willingly. As they led her toward the door, she looked back at Jake. Trust me, she said. And be ready. Jake didn't understand what she meant, but he could see something in her eyes that he hadn't seen before. Determination, like she was planning something. After they left, Jake turned to Ross. If you hurt her, I'll make you pay for it. Threats. Morrison? Ross asked. You're already in enough trouble. It's not a threat, Jake said. It's a promise. Ross left without another word, and Jake was alone with Dr. Chun. Lisa looked worried. This is bad, she said. Ross is planning something, and I don't think it's just an interrogation. What do you mean? Jake asked. I mean, I think he's going to try to use Lyra as bait, Lisa said. He wants to trade her back to the Zephyrians. In exchange for information, Jake felt cold. He can't do that. She's not property. To him, she is, Lisa said. And if he succeeds, her own people might kill her for cooperating with us. Then we have to stop him, Jake said. How? Lisa asked. He's got the authority, and we don't. Jake thought about Lyra's last words. Trust me, and be ready. What had she meant by that? Suddenly, the base's alarm system started wailing. Emergency lights began flashing, and Jake could hear soldiers running in the corridors outside. What's happening? Lisa asked. Jake ran to the window and looked out. In the distance, he could see explosions and the distinctive blue glow of Zephyrian energy weapons. The base was under attack. It's an assault, Jake said. A big one. Lisa was checking her computer. According to this, it's the same force that Ross was talking about. The one that was supposed to be carrying supplies. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Lisa, what if this isn't an accident? What do you mean? What if Ross used the information Lyra gave him to set up an ambush, but the Zephyrians were expecting it? Jake said, what if someone told them it was a trap? Lisa's eyes went wide. You think Lyra ... No, Jake said quickly. I think Ross did. I think he's using this attack to get rid of witnesses. The explosions were getting closer now, and Jake could hear the sound of energy weapons hitting the base's shields. Whatever was happening, it was big, and it was coming their way. We need to find Lyra, Jake said, before it's too late. The interrogation rooms are on the other side of the base, Lisa said. We'll never make it through the attack. Then we better start running, Jake said. Heading for the door. As they left the medical bay, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The war had come to their doorstep, and somehow he and Lyra were right in the middle of it. The medical bay at the human base was quiet, except for the soft beeping of machines. Jake sat in a chair next to Lyra's bed, watching as the alien girl slept. Her breathing was steady now, and the color had returned to her gray skin. The human doctors had been amazed at how quickly she was healing. It had been 3 days since Captain Foster and his men had found them in the ruins. Getting back to the base had been difficult, especially with Lyra refusing to let go of Jake's arm. Every time someone tried to separate them, she would become upset and start speaking rapidly in her own language. "She won't eat when you're not here," said Dr. Lisa Chun, entering the medical bay with a data pad in her hands. Lisa was the base's xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life forms. She had been working with Lyra since they arrived, trying to understand her language and culture. "What do you mean?" Jake asked, looking up from the book he had been reading. "I mean exactly that," Lisa said, pulling up a chair. "Yesterday, when you went to get cleaned up, she wouldn't touch her food. She just sat there staring at the door. Until you came back," Jake frowned. "Maybe she's just scared. I'm the only human she's had contact with before." "It's more than that," Lisa said. "I've been studying her behavior, and I think I'm beginning to understand what she meant when she said, 'You're mine now.'" "Human." Lyra stirred in her sleep and opened her eyes. When she saw Jake, she smiled, the first real smile Jake had seen. From her, she said something in her language that sounded like a greeting. "Good morning, Lyra," Jake said, returning her smile. "Good morning, Jake," she replied in English. Her accent was strange, but her pronunciation was getting better every day. Lisa leaned forward with interest. "Lyra, can you tell me what you meant when you said Jake was yours?" Lyra looked confused by the question. She spoke some words in her own language, then tried to explain in English. "Jake saved Lyra's life. Now Jake is ... She struggled to find the right word. "Guardian?" Lisa suggested. "No," Lyra said, shaking her head. "Jake is bound to Lyra. Lyra is bound to Jake." Lisa and Jake exchanged glances. "Bound how?" Lisa asked. Lyra pointed to her heart, then to Jake's heart. "Life debt," she said carefully. "When someone saves your life, you become connected, cannot be separated." "Like marriage?" Jake asked, feeling uncomfortable. No, Lyra said quickly. "Not like ... not like humans do. It's different. It's about survival, about protection." Lisa was writing notes on her data pad. "So in your culture, when someone saves your life, you become responsible for each other?" "Yes," Lyra said, nodding. "Lyra protect Jake now. Jake protect Lyra. Always." Before anyone could respond, the medical bay door opened and Commander Patricia Wells entered. She was a tall woman with gray hair and serious eyes. Behind her was Major Kevin Ross, the base's intelligence officer. "Dr. Chun, Morrison," the commander said with a nod. "How is our guest today?" "She's doing well physically," Lisa replied, "and we're making progress with communication." Major Ross stepped forward and looked down at Lyra. "Good. I have some questions for her." Lyra moved closer to Jake, her eyes fixed on the major. Jake could see that she was afraid of him. "What kind of questions?" Jake asked. "Military questions," Ross said. "Troop movements, weapons, base locations. The usual." "She's not a soldier," Jake said. "Look at her. She's barely more than a civilian." "She's wearing a Zephyrian uniform," Ross pointed out. "That makes her military." Lyra understood enough of the conversation to know what was happening. She spoke to Jake in her own language, her voice urgent and worried. "She says she's not a fighter," Jake translated, though he wasn't sure if he was getting it right. "She says she was forced to wear the uniform." Ross crossed his arms. "How do you know what she's saying? You don't speak their language." I don't know," Jake admitted. "I just understand somehow." Lisa looked interested. "That's fascinating. It might be part of the bonding process she mentioned." Commander Wells held up her hand. "Let's focus on the important issues. Major Ross, you can question her later. Right now, I need to know if she's going to be a problem." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "I mean, Morrison, that you brought in. Enemy soldier into our base, and she's claiming some kind of ownership over you. My superiors are not happy about this situation." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "She's not claiming ownership. It's about honor, about debt." "Explain it to me," the commander said. Lisa spoke up. Based on what I've learned, their culture has a concept similar to a life debt. When someone saves your life, you become bound to them in a way that requires mutual protection. So she's like his bodyguard? Ross asked. More than that, Lisa said. From what I can tell, they're supposed to stay together. The bond can't be broken easily. Commander Wells looked thoughtful. And what happens if we separate them? I don't know, Lisa admitted. But based on her behavior, I don't think it would be good for either of them. As if to prove the point, Lyra suddenly sat up in bed and grabbed Jake's hand. She was staring at the commander with wide eyes, and Jake could feel her trembling. What's wrong? Jake asked. Lyra spoke rapidly in her own language, then switched to English. They want to take Jake away. Cannot let them take Jake away. Nobody's taking anyone away, Jake said, trying to calm her down. But he wasn't sure if that was true. Commander Wells watched the interaction with interest. She really is attached to you, isn't she? It's not romantic, Jake said quickly. It's cultural. I understand that, the commander said. But it still creates problems. We can't have an enemy soldier living in our base indefinitely. She's not really an enemy, Jake said. She's just someone who got caught up in this war. Major Ross laughed. They're all enemies, Morrison. Don't let her alien charm fool you. Lyra understood the hostile tone, even if she didn't understand all the words. She moved even closer to Jake, and he put his arm around her shoulders protectively. She's not charming me, Jake said. She's just scared and alone. She's a security risk, Ross said. We should be interrogating her, not having tea parties. She's under my protection, Jake said firmly. I won't let you hurt her. Commander Wells raised an eyebrow. Your protection? Since when do privates give orders about prisoners? Since I saved her life, Jake said. And since she saved mine. She saved your life, the commander asked. Jake nodded. When those Zephyrian soldiers found us, she threw herself in front of their weapons to protect me. She could have died. Lisa was writing more notes. That would strengthen the bond significantly. It's no longer just about Jake saving her. It's mutual now. This is getting too complicated, Major Ross said. We should just lock her up and be done with it. No, Jake said, standing up. I won't let you do that. You won't let us. Ross asked, his voice dangerous. Commander Wells stepped between them. That's enough. Morrison, sit down. Major, back off. Jake reluctantly sat back down, but he kept his arm around Lyra. She was looking back and forth between the humans, trying to understand what was happening. Here's what we're going to do, Commander Wells said. Dr. Chun, I want you to continue studying this bonding phenomenon. I want to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Yes, ma'am, Lisa said. Morrison, you're relieved of duty until further notice. You'll stay here with the alien and help Dr. Chun with her research. And if I refuse, Jake asked, then you'll be charged with disobeying orders and possibly treason, the commander said calmly. Jake felt trapped. He looked down at Lyra, who was watching him with those large dark eyes. She didn't understand the conversation, but she could sense his distress. What about her? Jake asked. She stays here for now, Commander Wells said, under guard. I am the guard, Lyra said suddenly, her English clear and firm. I guard Jake. He guard me. No one else. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at Lyra. Surprised by her sudden declaration, Commander Wells smiled slightly. Well, that settles that, doesn't it? Jake helped Lyra move deeper into the ruined building, away from the sounds of battle outside. Her weight pressed against his side as she tried to walk on her injured leg. Every few steps, she had to stop and rest, breathing hard from the pain. We need to find a better place to hide, Jake whispered, looking around at the broken walls and fallen debris. The building had several rooms, and some of them were more protected than others. Lyra said something in her language, pointing toward the back of the building. Jake couldn't understand her words, but her tone seemed urgent. He helped her move in that direction, and they found a small room that was almost completely intact. The walls were thick, and there was only one way in or out. "This is better," Jake said, helping Lyra sit down against the wall. She was getting weaker, and he could see that moving had been difficult for her. Jake checked his radio again, but there was still only static. The jamming equipment that both sides used made communication almost impossible during battles. He was truly on his own now. Outside, the sounds of fighting were getting louder. Jake could hear the distinctive whine of Zephyrian energy weapons and the sharp crack of human projectile guns. The battle was moving closer to their hiding place. Lyra grabbed Jake's arm and pointed toward the entrance. Her large dark eyes were wide with fear, and she whispered something that sounded like a warning. Jake listened carefully and heard what she had noticed first: the sound of footsteps moving through the outer rooms. Jake picked up his rifle and moved toward the entrance, signaling for Lyra to stay quiet. The footsteps were getting closer, and he could hear voices speaking in the Zephyrian language. They sounded angry and urgent. Through a crack in the wall, Jake saw 3 Zephyrian soldiers entering the building. They were fully armed and wearing the heavy battle armor that Jake knew so well. These were not like Lyra. They were warriors, big and dangerous. The soldiers were searching the building, probably looking for human survivors to capture or kill. Jake knew that if they found him, there would be a fight, and in his current position, he wouldn't have much chance of winning. But then Jake realized something worse. If the Zephyrian soldiers found Lyra with him, they might think she was a traitor. Jake had heard stories about how the Zephyrians treated their own soldiers who showed any weakness or mercy toward humans. The footsteps were getting closer. Jake could hear the soldiers talking to each other as they searched. One of them was giving orders to the others, and his voice sounded harsh and commanding. Lyra tried to stand up, probably wanting to reveal herself to her own people, but Jake gently pushed her back down. Something in his expression must have told her that this was not a good idea, because she stayed where she was. The first soldier appeared in the doorway of their hiding room. He was tall and broad, with armor that was decorated with marks that probably showed his rank. His weapon was already raised and ready to fire. The soldier saw Jake immediately and shouted something to his companions. Jake raised his own weapon, knowing that he was about to die. The soldier's finger moved toward the trigger of his energy weapon. That was when Lyra did something that surprised everyone. She threw herself forward, putting her wounded body between Jake and the Zephyrian soldier. She cried out in her own language, words that sounded like she was begging or pleading. The soldier stopped, his weapon still aimed, but his finger no longer on the trigger. He stared at Lyra in shock, clearly not understanding why she was protecting a human. Lyra continued to speak rapidly in Zephyrian, her voice weak but urgent. Jake couldn't understand the words, but he could hear the emotion in them. She was trying to explain something, trying to make the soldier understand. The other 2 soldiers had arrived now, and they were also staring at the scene in confusion. One of them started to raise his weapon toward Jake, but the first soldier barked an order that made him stop. There was a long moment of silence. Lyra was still positioned between Jake and the soldiers, her body shaking from weakness and fear. Jake kept his weapon ready, but he didn't want to shoot while Lyra was in the way. Then the first soldier said something that sounded like a question. Lyra answered, her voice getting stronger. She pointed to her bandaged wounds, then to Jake. Then back to her wounds. Jake began to understand. She was telling them that he had helped her, that he had saved her life instead of killing her. The soldiers looked at each other, clearly confused by this information. The second soldier said something that sounded angry. He pointed his weapon at Jake again, but Lyra moved to block his shot. She spoke more forcefully now, and Jake could hear authority in her voice despite her weakness. The soldiers began to argue among themselves. Their voices got louder, and Jake could sense that they were disagreeing about what to do. One of them wanted to kill Jake, but the others seemed uncertain. During their argument, Jake heard something that made his heart jump. It was the sound of human voices, calling out in English. His rescue beacon must have finally gotten through the jamming, and a human patrol was searching for him. The Zephyrian soldiers heard it too. They stopped arguing and looked toward the entrance of the building. The sound of human footsteps was getting closer, and Jake could hear someone calling his name. "Morrison! Jake Morrison! Are you in there?" Jake recognized the voice. It was Captain Ryan Foster, his company commander. Relief flooded through him, but he also felt a new kind of fear. What would happen to Lyra when the human soldiers found her? The Zephyrian soldiers were in a difficult position now. They were outnumbered and trapped in the building with human soldiers approaching. The smart thing for them to do would be to retreat, but they couldn't leave one of their own people behind. The first soldier made a decision. He spoke quickly to his companions, and they began to move toward the back of the building. But before they left, the soldier looked at Lyra and said something that sounded like a warning or a threat. Lyra responded with words that were quiet but firm. The soldier stared at her for a moment, then turned and followed his companions out of the building. Jake and Lyra were alone again, but not for long. The human voices were very close now, and Jake could hear boots on the debris outside. "I'm here," Jake called out. "In the back room." Lyra looked at him with those large, dark eyes, and Jake could see fear there. She knew that the human soldiers might not be as understanding as Jake had been. She tried to move away from him, probably thinking that it would be better for both of them if the humans didn't find them together. But Jake gently took her hand and squeezed it. "It's okay," he said softly. "I won't let them hurt you." Captain Foster appeared in the doorway, his rifle ready. Behind him were two other soldiers that Jake recognized, Sergeant Tony Clark and Private Ben Lewis. They all stopped when they saw Lyra. "What the hell, Morrison?" Foster said, his weapon now aimed at Lyra. "Why is there a live enemy in here?" Before Jake could answer, Lyra did something that none of them expected. She grabbed Jake's arm with both hands, pulled herself closer to him, and spoke her first words in English. "You're mine now, human," she said. Her voice weak but clear. The human soldiers stared at her in shock. Jake felt just as confused as they looked. He had no idea what she meant by those words, but he could see that they were important to her. Foster lowered his weapon slightly, but kept it ready. "Morrison, you better explain what's going on here, and you better do it fast." Jake looked down at Lyra, who was still holding his arm and looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite understand. Whatever she had meant by her words, Jake knew that his life had just become much more complicated. The sound of energy weapons filled the air as Jake Morrison pressed his back against the broken wall. His rifle felt heavy in his hands, and sweat dripped down his face despite the cool air of the alien planet. The ruins of the city stretched around him, with twisted metal and strange stones scattered everywhere. "Morrison, where are you?" The voice of his squad leader crackled through his helmet radio, but the signal was weak and broken. Jake tried to respond, but only static came through. He was alone now, cut off from his unit during the fierce battle that had been raging for 3 days. The Zephyrians had hit them hard, and his squad had been forced to scatter when their position was overrun. He moved carefully through the rubble, keeping low and watching for any sign of movement. The buildings here were different from anything on Earth. They curved upward like giant shells, with smooth surfaces that seemed to change color in the light. Most of them were damaged now, with huge holes blown through their walls. Jake had been fighting the Zephyrians for 6 months now, ever since they had attacked the human colonies on the Outer Rim. Nobody knew why they had started the war. They just appeared one day with their strange ships and powerful weapons, destroying everything in their path. The young Marine had seen many battles, but this one on Kepler 442b was the worst yet. The planet was important because it had rare minerals that both sides needed. The fighting had been brutal, with neither side willing to give up. As Jake moved through the ruins, he heard a sound that made him freeze. It was soft, almost like crying, but different from any human sound. He gripped his rifle tighter and moved toward the noise. The sound came from inside a partially collapsed building. Jake could see through a gap in the wall, and what he saw made him stop breathing for a moment. There, lying in a pool of strange blue liquid, was a Zephyrian soldier, but this one looked different from the others he had fought. The Zephyrians were usually big and strong, with thick armor that covered their bodies. This one was smaller, and the armor looked lighter, more like protective clothing than battle gear. Jake could see that the alien was badly hurt. The blue liquid around her body was obviously blood, and she was breathing in short, painful gasps. Her skin was pale gray, almost white, and her large eyes were closed. For a moment, Jake just stood there, not sure what to do. This was the enemy, the same species that had killed many of his friends and destroyed human colonies. His training told him to either capture the alien or leave her to die, but as he watched, the alien's eyes opened. They were large and dark, with no white parts like human eyes. She looked at him with fear, but also with something else. Hope. Maybe. Jake had always been different from the other soldiers. While they saw only enemies, he still saw living beings. His mother had raised him to help others, even when it was difficult. "We're all just trying to survive," she used to say. The alien tried to move, but pain shot through her body, and she gasped. Jake could see that she had been shot in the side, and there was another wound on her leg. Without the right medical care, she would die soon. Jake looked around to make sure no one was watching, then slowly approached the gap in the wall. The alien saw him coming and tried to back away, but she was too weak to move far. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jake said quietly, even though he knew she couldn't understand him. He put his rifle down and held up his hands to show he meant no harm. The alien stared at him with those large, dark eyes. Jake could see intelligence there, and fear, but also curiosity. She was trying to figure out what he was going to do. Jake pulled out his first aid kit and crawled through the gap into the building. The alien tried to speak, but only made soft sounds that Jake couldn't understand. Her voice was higher than a human voice, almost musical. "It's okay," Jake whispered, moving slowly so he wouldn't frighten her more. "I'm going to help you." He examined her wounds carefully. The injury to her side was deep, but it had missed anything vital. The leg wound was worse, with damage to what looked like an artery. Jake worked quickly, using his medical supplies to stop the bleeding and clean the wounds. The alien watched him work, her eyes never leaving his face. Sometimes she made soft sounds, like she was trying to talk to him. Jake found himself talking back, even though neither of them could understand the other. "You're going to be okay," he said as he bandaged her side. "I know you can't understand me, but I'm trying to help." The alien reached out with one shaky hand and touched his arm. Her skin was warm, warmer than he had expected. She looked into his eyes and said something in her own language. The words were soft and musical, but Jake could hear the emotion in them. As Jake worked on her leg wound, he noticed more things about her. Her hands were similar to human hands, but with longer fingers. Her face was more angular than a human face, but still recognizable as a face. She was wearing what looked like a uniform, but it was torn and dirty. "Are you a soldier?" Jake asked, knowing she couldn't answer. "Or are you just someone who got caught in this mess?" The alien seemed to understand his tone, even if she couldn't understand his words. She pointed to herself and said something that sounded like Lyra. Then she pointed to him with a questioning look. "Jake," he said, pointing to himself. "My name is Jake." "Jake," she repeated, her voice making the name sound different, but still recognizable. Jake finished bandaging her wounds and sat back. Alien Lyra was looking better already. The bleeding had stopped, and her breathing was easier, but she was still very weak. "You need to get to a hospital," Jake said, then realized how silly that sounded. There were no hospitals here, just battlefield medical stations, and they wouldn't treat an enemy soldier. Lyra tried to sit up, but Jake gently pushed her back down. "Rest," he said. "You're safe for now." But even as he said it, Jake knew it wasn't true. The fighting was still going on all around them. Sooner or later, someone would find them here. If it was human soldiers, they would want to capture or kill Lyra. If it was Zephyrians, they might not understand why a human was helping their wounded. Jake looked at his rifle, then at Lyra, then back at his rifle. He had made a choice that could get him in serious trouble with his commanders. But looking at this wounded being, he knew he had done the right thing. "We need to get you somewhere safe," he said, mostly to himself. Lyra seemed to understand the seriousness of the situation. She struggled to sit up again, and this time Jake helped her. She was lighter than he had expected, and her body felt fragile in his arms. "Can you walk?" Jake asked, making walking motions with his fingers. Lyra nodded and tried to stand, but her wounded leg wouldn't support her weight. Jake caught her as she started to fall, and she leaned against him for support. The sound of weapons fire was getting closer. Jake knew they couldn't stay here much longer. He had to make a decision, and he had to make it fast. Looking down at Lyra, who was depending on him for survival, Jake realized that everything he thought he knew about this war was about to change.